What happens when a room full of millionaire engineers can't solve a problem, but a 12-year-old black girl walks in and fixes it in minutes? Marcus Calloway, CEO of MathCore Industries, threw down a challenge worth $100 million. His entire team of elite programmers stood frozen, humiliated, powerless. The company's future hung by a thread. And then she appeared, a child in worn sneakers, clutching her mother's hand, watching from the doorway. What she did next didn't just save a billion-dollar company. It exposed a truth so uncomfortable that it would tear through the walls of corporate America like wildfire. But before she could prove herself, she had to survive something far more brutal than any technical challenge, the venom of men who couldn't accept that their privilege had blinded them to genius standing right in front of them.
Her name was Zara, and she'd spent most of her 12 years invisible. Not literally, of course, but invisible in the way that children of maintenance workers, of cleaners, of the people who empty the trash bins and polish the marble floors of corporate towers, they're invisible. They exist in the spaces between importance, in the margins of rooms where million-dollar decisions are made. Zara's mother, Diana, had worked as a cleaner at MathCore Industries for 7 years. Every weekday, she arrived at 6 a.m., 2 hours before the engineers rolled in with their caramel macchiatos and Tesla key fobs. Diana scrubbed toilets, vacuumed conference rooms, and wiped down the glass walls where brilliant minds scribbled equations that were supposed to change the world. And sometimes, when school was closed or childcare fell through, Zara came with her. The girl would sit quietly in the break room, homework spread across the table, headphones in her ears. She never bothered anyone, never spoke unless spoken to. The engineers who occasionally wandered in for coffee barely registered her presence, just another brown face in the background, easy to overlook, easier to forget. But Zara was always watching, always listening. She noticed things. The way the senior developers talked about algorithms like they were solving puzzles, the way they'd argue over solutions on the whiteboards, voices rising with passion and frustration. She'd watch them through the glass walls, her eyes tracking the symbols and code like other kids tracked basketball plays. At home, in the small 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother, Zara had a second-hand laptop, a gift from a church donation drive. The screen had a crack across one corner, and it took 3 minutes to boot up, but she loved it more than anything she owned. Late at night, while her mother slept the exhausted sleep of someone who'd spent 12 hours on their feet, Zara taught herself to code. YouTube tutorials, free online courses, programming forums where nobody knew she was 12, nobody knew she was black, nobody knew she lived in subsidized housing and wore the same 3 outfits to school on rotation. Online, she was just a username, just a mind asking questions, solving problems, and getting better. She'd started with basic Python when she was 9. By 11, she'd moved into Java, C++, and machine learning frameworks. She didn't brag about it, didn't even tell her teachers. They were too busy managing overcrowded classrooms and underfunded programs to notice that one of her students was operating at a college level. Zara understood something fundamental about the world. People saw what they expected to see, and they expected nothing from her. But that was about to change. On a humid Tuesday morning in late September, Diana got the call every hourly worker dreaded. Her supervisor's voice was clipped, urgent. "We need everyone in today. Emergency. The overnight crew didn't finish. There's a major presentation happening, and the executive floor is a disaster." Diana closed her eyes, mental calculations racing. Zara's school was closed for teacher planning. Her brother was already at her sister's place. She had no backup. "I need to bring my daughter," Diana said quietly. "Just for a few hours. She'll stay out of the way, I promise." A pause. Then, "Fine, but she better be invisible." Invisible. That word again. They arrived at MathCore Industries just after 7. The building was already humming with anxious energy. Something was wrong. Zara could feel it the moment they stepped into the lobby. Security guards, who usually waved them through, were tense, whispering into radios. Executives were arriving early, faces drawn. Diana headed to the supply closet for her cart, but Zara's attention was pulled elsewhere, toward the executive floor, where voices were rising in panic. She shouldn't have been curious, should have stayed in the break room like always, headphones in, invisible. But Zara had never been good at ignoring problems. And upstairs, in the gleaming war room of MathCore Industries, the biggest problem the company had ever faced was about to explode.
The scene on the executive floor was chaos, barely contained by expensive suits and forced professionalism. Zara stood in the doorway, unnoticed, watching as 20-some engineers crowded around a massive glass conference table. At the head of the room stood Marcus Calloway, CEO, founder, and the kind of man whose confidence filled every space he entered. He was mid-40s, silver streaking his temples, wearing a suit that cost more than Diana's annual salary. But today, his confidence looked more like barely controlled rage. "Somebody tell me," Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet, "how we're supposed to demo our flagship AI to investors in 4 hours when the entire system is bricked." The engineers exchanged glances. One of them, a senior developer named Ryan, early 30s, hoodie under a blazer, cleared his throat. "The neural network optimization crashed during the night. We've been trying to restore it for 6 hours. The backup protocols, they're not responding. We can't even access the core architecture." "Can't?" Marcus's voice rose. "We have 17 PhDs in this room. We have 2 MIT graduates. We have people who've built AI for NASA and Google, and you're telling me we can't fix our own system?" "It's not that simple," another engineer, a woman named Priya, interjected. "The crash corrupted something in the base code. We're essentially locked out. We'd need to rebuild from scratch, and that would take weeks." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "We don't have weeks. We have 4 hours. If we don't demonstrate this system to the Steinman Group today, they walk. If they walk, we lose $200 million in funding. If we lose that funding, this company is finished." The weight of those words settled over the room like a funeral shroud. Zara, still unnoticed in the doorway, felt her heart rate quicken. She'd heard about the Steinman Group. They were venture capitalists, the kind of people who turned startups into empires or crushed them into dust. MathCore's entire future rested on this presentation. And their system was dead. Marcus paced, running his hand through his hair. Then he stopped, turning to face his team with something between desperation and mockery. "All right, new game. Whoever fixes this, truly fixes it, gets us operational, I will personally write them a check for $100 million. Stunned silence. "You're joking," someone whispered. "Do I look like I'm joking? My personal fortune, $100 million. Solve this problem." The room erupted. Engineers dove back to their laptops, fingers flying across keyboards. Phone calls were made. External consultants were conference called in. The energy shifted from panic to frenzied determination. But minutes turned into an hour. An hour turned into 2. Nothing worked. Zara watched from the doorway, her 12-year-old mind processing everything she heard. Neural network, corrupted base code, backup protocols unresponsive. She'd read about systems like this. She'd even built a small AI model herself last summer just for fun, following tutorials and documentation. She knew she shouldn't speak,
knew that walking into that room would be crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But she also knew something else. She might be able to help. Her mother appeared beside her, pushing the cleaning cart, eyes widening when she saw where Zara was standing. "Baby, what are you doing here? You need to—" "Mom," Zara whispered, not taking her eyes off the engineers. "I think I know what's wrong with their system." Diana's face went pale. "Zara, no, absolutely not. These are not people you interrupt." "But—" "No!" Diana's voice was firm, terrified. She grabbed Zara's hand. "We're leaving, now!" But as they turned to go, Marcus's voice rang out again. "This is pathetic! 3 hours left and you people are running in circles!" He grabbed the laptop, yanking the power cord out in frustration. The machine went dark. And then, in a fit of theatrical fury, he unscrewed the back panel of the tower computer, sitting on the conference table, the one running their AI system, exposing its internal components. "Maybe if you could actually see the damn problem," he shouted. The engineers stared at the exposed circuitry like mourners at a coffin. And that's when Zara saw it. A tiny detail. Something so obvious that she almost laughed. The RAM modules, they weren't seated properly. One of them was tilted at an angle, probably jostled loose during the server transport last week that she'd overheard engineers complaining about. It wasn't a software problem at all. It was hardware. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. "The memory isn't connected right." Every head turned. 20 pairs of eyes landed on a 12-year-old black girl in a faded t-shirt and worn sneakers standing next to a woman in a cleaning uniform. The silence was suffocating. Marcus's face shifted through confusion, then irritation, then something uglier. "Excuse me?" Zara's voice was steadier than she felt. "Your RAM, one of the modules, isn't seated properly. That's why your system can't access the neural network. It's not a software corruption. It's a hardware connection failure." Ryan, the senior developer, actually laughed. A short, sharp bark of dismissive sound. "Are you serious right now? We've run full diagnostics. This is a neural net architecture problem, not—" "Have you checked the physical connections?" Zara interrupted. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus stepped forward, his face darkening. "Who the hell are you? And why are you in my executive conference room?" Diana stepped in front of her daughter, voice shaking. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Calloway. This is my daughter. I had to bring her to work today. She'll leave right now." "Your daughter?" Marcus's eyes flicked between them, and something cruel twisted in his expression. "Your cleaning lady's daughter just waltzed in here and thinks she can solve a problem that 17 engineers with advanced degrees can't figure out?" "I was just—" Zara started. "You were just what? Watching from the hallway and decided to play computer expert? What are you, 12? Do you even know what a neural network is, sweetheart?" The word sweetheart landed like a slap. Priya shifted uncomfortably. A few engineers looked away, but no one spoke up. "I'm 12, Zara said quietly. "And yes, I know what a neural network is. I built one last summer. And I'm telling you, your problem is hardware. If you just reseat the RAM, enough," Marcus shouted, echoing off the glass walls. "I don't have time for this nonsense. Diana, get your daughter out of here before I have security escort you both out permanently." Diana's face crumbled. 7 years of work. 7 years of scrubbing floors and biting her tongue and staying invisible, all about to disappear because her daughter tried to help. "Please," Diana whispered. "Mr. Calloway, I'm sorry. She didn't mean any disrespect." "Disrespect?" Marcus laughed bitterly.
This is beyond disrespect. This is insulting. I have the best technical minds in Silicon Valley in this room, and some kid who probably learned about computers from YouTube thinks she can... Let her try. Everyone turned. The voice belonged to James Chen, one of the senior architects, early 50s, quieter than the others. Marcus stared at him. What? Let her try, James repeated. What do we have to lose? Nothing else is working anyway. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. If we don't fix this in 2 hours, the company dies anyway. Let the kid check the hardware. Marcus's jaw clenched. His eyes moved from James to Zara, and the contempt in his gaze was palpable. Fine. You want to embarrass yourself? Be my guest. He gestured mockingly toward the exposed computer tower. Fix this, genius, and I'll give you that $100 million myself. The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. But Zara didn't hesitate. She walked forward, her mother's terrified breathing loud in her ears, and knelt down beside the computer. Her hands were steady.
Zara's fingers moved with the careful precision of someone who understood that this moment would define everything that came after. The room watched in suspended silence as she examined the exposed tower. The RAM modules sat in their slots like soldiers at attention, except one. The third stick from the left, just as she'd suspected, was tilted at a 15-degree angle, its gold connectors barely making contact with the motherboard. Here, she said softly, pointing. This wasn't fully seated during your last hardware maintenance. When the system tried to access memory during the neural network optimization, it hit a failure state. The software couldn't process the error, so it cascaded into what looked like a corruption. Ryan scoffed. That's impossible. We ran hardware diagnostics. Software diagnostics, Zara corrected, not looking up, which couldn't detect the physical connection issue because the system could still see the RAM was installed, just not that it wasn't making proper contact. She reached for the module, then paused, looking up at Marcus. May I? The CEO's face was a mask of barely contained fury. This child, this poor black girl in second-hand clothes, was handling his company's most critical hardware while his entire team stood useless. The humiliation of it burned in his eyes. But he jerked his head in a curt nod. Zara carefully released the retention clips and removed the RAM stick. She examined it, wiped the gold connectors gently with the hem of her shirt, and then, with the practiced confidence of someone who'd built and rebuilt computers dozens of times on her bedroom floor, reseated it properly. A soft click as it locked into place. She stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. Try booting it now. No one moved. I said try it, Zara repeated, louder this time. James Chen stepped forward and pressed the power button. The tower hummed to life. Lights blinked on. The monitor flickered, and then lines of code cascaded across the screen. System checks ran, and then, in the center of the display, the MathCore AI interface loaded perfectly. Neural network status. Operational. The room erupted. Oh my God! It's working! The neural net is back online! Engineers crowded around the monitor, hands flying across keyboards, checking systems, verifying data integrity. Everything was functioning. Not just working, perfectly working. Zara stepped back, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Priya turned to her, eyes wide with something between shock and respect. How did you even know to look there? Process of elimination, Zara said quietly. You said the backups weren't responding, which meant the system couldn't access stored memory. But if it was true corruption, you wouldn't have been able to boot at all. So it had to be a hardware connectivity issue, and RAM is the most common failure point in high-performance systems. James Chen was staring at her like he was seeing a ghost. How old did you say you were? 12. And you learned this where? Online. YouTube. Documentation.
I like computers." The simplicity of the answer seemed to stagger them. But Marcus Calloway wasn't celebrating. He stood frozen at the head of the table, his face cycling through emotions, disbelief, rage, humiliation, and something darker. His entire team of elite engineers, his expensive hires, his MIT graduates, none of them had seen what a 12-year-old girl spotted in minutes. And she was black and poor and the daughter of his cleaning lady. The symbolism was too perfect, too damning, too impossible to ignore. Ryan, perhaps sensing his boss's mood, stepped forward. "Okay, so she got lucky. That was a 1 in a million guess." "It wasn't a guess," Zara said firmly. "It was logic." "Logic?" Ryan's laugh was defensive, mean. "You're a kid. You probably just—" "She saved the company." James Chen's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Whatever you want to call it, she fixed a problem none of us solved. That deserves recognition." Marcus's face went red. "Recognition? You want me to throw a parade for this? He gestured at Zara, searching for words, landing on cruelty. "This child who wandered in off the street?" "I didn't wander in," Zara said, her voice shaking now but not backing down. "I've been here hundreds of times. I watch you all work through the glass. I listen. I learn. And I'm good at this. Really good." "You're a charity case with a laptop. Don't confuse luck with competence." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Her mother gasped, stepping forward, but Zara held up her hand. "You said anyone who fixed it gets $100 million. You said it in front of everyone." Marcus's smile was poison. "I was talking to engineers, to professionals, not to children playing dress-up." "She fixed it," James repeated, his voice hard. "Honor your word, Marcus." The CEO turned on him. "Don't tell me how to run my company. She got lucky, that's all." But the room's energy had shifted. Engineers were looking at Marcus differently now. The mask had slipped. The benevolent genius CEO was showing his true face, the face of a man who couldn't accept that his privilege, his assumptions, his expensive hires had been bested by someone he deemed beneath notice. Zara stared at him, tears now streaming down her face, but her voice didn't waver. "You can't take it back just because you don't like who solved it." Marcus leaned down, his face inches from hers, and whispered loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Watch me." And in that moment, Zara understood something that would shape the rest of her life. Genius didn't matter if the world refused to see it. The presentation to the Steinman Group went flawlessly. MathCore's AI demonstrated perfectly. Investors signed on the dotted line, and $200 million in funding secured the company's future. Marcus Calloway became a tech industry hero, featured in Forbes and TechCrunch for his resilient leadership during a critical system failure. Zara's name never appeared in any of those articles. But what happened in that conference room didn't stay secret. Engineers talk, assistants whisper, and in the age of social media, stories like Zara's don't stay buried. 3 days after the incident, a senior developer named Priya posted a thread on Twitter. She didn't name the company, but she detailed the story. A 12-year-old black girl solving a technical problem that stumped a room full of engineers, a CEO refusing to honor his promise, a family's dignity trampled on. The thread went viral. 100,000 retweets in 24 hours. Tech communities erupted. News outlets picked it up. Hashtags trended, and suddenly, MathCore Industries was facing a very different kind of attention. Marcus Calloway tried damage control, press releases about misunderstandings and commitments to diversity. But the internet is undefeated. Someone leaked internal Slack messages where executives discussed dealing with the optics and containing the cleaning lady situation. 2 weeks later, MathCore's board of directors held an emergency meeting. Marcus Calloway was asked to step down, not because they cared about Zara's dignity, but because the controversy was costing them. Clients were pulling contracts. Talent was refusing to interview. The brand was poisoned. And that's the ugly truth. Accountability came not from conscience, but from consequences. Zara and her mother found themselves at the center of a media firestorm they never asked for. Diana was terrified. This was the kind of attention that destroyed people like them. But then, the phone calls started coming. Tech CEOs who'd read the story and were ashamed of their industry. Scholarship programs, mentorship offers. A venture capitalist named Sarah Park reached out directly. "I'm funding your daughter's education. Full ride. Computer science, whatever school she wants." An MIT professor sent an email. "I'm starting a program for young coders from underserved communities. Zara should lead it." Offers poured in. Not charity, but recognition. Not pity, but respect. But the offer that mattered most came from James Chan. He'd left MathCore in protest and started his own company. He called Diana directly. "I want Zara as a consultant, paid. Contract work on AI development. I'll work around her school schedule. She's got a mind we can't afford to waste." Zara became the youngest paid technical consultant in Silicon Valley history. At 12, she was contributing to real AI projects, her name finally appearing in code repositories and credits. But more than the jobs and the opportunities, something else shifted. Zara's story became a rallying cry. Other children, black, brown, poor, overlooked, started sharing their own stories of brilliance dismissed, of potential ignored, of voices silenced because they came from the wrong backgrounds. A movement crystallized around a simple truth. Genius doesn't only exist in ivy-covered halls and Silicon Valley campuses. It exists in subsidized housing, in overcrowded classrooms, in the children of cleaning ladies and line cooks and delivery drivers. It exists everywhere, but we only see it when we choose to look. 1 year after that day, Zara stood on a TEDx stage. She was 13 now, taller, more confident, wearing clothes that fit and sneakers without holes. Her mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Zara's talk was titled, "The Cost of Assumptions." She spoke about standing in that conference room, about being dismissed, about the weight of representing everyone who looked like her every time she opened her mouth. And then she said something that would be quoted 1,000,000 times over. They didn't see a problem solver. They saw a poor black girl. And to them, those two things couldn't exist in the same person. But here's the truth. The world is full of people like me. People with answers you're not hearing because you're not listening. People with solutions you're ignoring because they don't fit your picture of what brilliance looks like. And every time you dismiss someone because of what they look like, where they come from, or how much money they have, you're not just being cruel. You're being stupid because you're throwing away genius. The audience rose to their feet. But the real moment came afterwards, backstage, when a young black boy approached Zara. He couldn't have been more than 8. He looked up at her with wide eyes and asked, "Did you really fix the computer?" Zara knelt down, meeting his eyes. "I really did." "Even though they didn't think you could?" "Especially because they didn't think I could." The boy smiled. "I want to fix computers too." "Then do it. And don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Because you are. And the world needs what you have to offer."